What's going on, guys? Matt at Middleton Motorsports here, coming at you with another episode of Behind the Tune. So today on the dyno 2016 GT350. So I'm going to flip the camera around here. Let's go up here and take a look at it. Competition orange. I love this color. Super cool with the black accents, black stripes. Probably one of my favorite colors for the S550s. I think they only offered it up until this year, and that was it. This is for oranges. This is my favorite orange. So said to go ahead and say that. I love the way this car looks. Really cool car. So bolt-on car, pump gas. So we got a K&N Intake. It's one of the smaller tube intakes. Long tube headers, high flow cats, and I believe this has an entire exhaust system. So it's headers to tailpipe. I believe it's American Racing. So decent sound to it. Obviously this Voodoo engine, high rev and stuff, sounds really good with a set of headers and a set of different mufflers. But pretty basic. It's got JLT dual catch cans on it. I believe this gentleman bought this car in this state, so it did have an SCT style BDX programmer on it. Not sure what the tune was. I did take a look at it, but I always go back to stock and start from scratch on stuff that's already been previously tuned. So I did take a look at it. It had kind of some run-of-the-mill global stuff changed, but nothing too crazy. So we're basically, I put a stock tune back in it and went from scratch. So, but nothing too crazy. Like I said, just some external bolt-on stuff. But definitely, what we got here definitely adds on to what these things make stock. So since this car came in like this with the mods already on it, I didn't have a chance to have a baseline on it. These cars typically on this dyno, these 350s, will make 440-ish, somewhere in that range to the tires from what I've seen in the past with the stock GT350s. So we're definitely up above that. And I got maybe one more pull to do of just working on some of the cam angle stuff. But yeah, going really good so far. So dyno numbers so far, this is where we're at. So first pull there is 478. Working on, like I said, working on some of the cam angle stuff, the VCT stuff up at the top. And again, not a lot of low-hanging fruit, from where my baseline was. I've done these cars before, so I kind of know what to change and where the timing's going to be on pump gas on 91 octane. So, being an NA deal, there's not, you can put as much timing into them as they're going to make power till, and obviously there's not a lot of low-hanging fruit here. It's not like you're picking up, we changed a little bit of timing and it picked up 15 or 20 wheel like a boosted car. So when we're doing NA tuning, once we get near the end of the tuning, you're starting to chase single-digit stuff like that with maybe air fuel and timing and cam angle on the Coyote stuff, obviously. So yeah, that's basically where I'm at so far. I did some street tuning on this car before I hit the dyno with it, so just to make sure the drivability. I like reducing a lot of the clutch torque management on these cars. I'm not a huge fan of how they drive stock when you're modulating the throttle and the clutch pedal coming away from a stop. I kind of reduce some of that torque modulation where it's pulling timing, adding timing, pulling timing, adding timing, and it makes it drive a little, I think, more like an older style, like cable throttle body with a little better throttle response. I typically tune all the stick shift Coyote cars that way, especially the Gen 2 and Gen 3 cars kind of have this tip-in timing pull, and I reduce that quite a bit, so makes the throttle a little snappier, a little easier to drive. So yeah, that's where we're at so far. 482, 481 was the last pull. And yeah, I'm happy with that. Like I said, these cars will typically make 440, 445 on this dyno when they're completely stock, so we're up probably about 40 at the tires with some external bolt-ons on this car. So I'm going to do one more pull. I'll video that, and we'll take a look at the data log, and we'll take a look at our final numbers, and we'll get this one back on the road. like we picked up just a smidge up at the top end with that cam angle change like I was talking about. So 484, 416 torque. So when we were looking at the dynographs before, what I was talking about here is just this up here. So with the headers, typically, and this is pretty typical, even when you boost these things, when you put long tube headers on them, it just changes the VE enough. The scavenging effect of the headers kind of changes the way the cams work for the overlap period, especially. And you can take advantage of that with some angle changes up here. So you can see it's not a lot. I mean, we're talking, you know, single digit gains, but it's something. So if there's gains to be had without taxing anything or being, you know, leaning on stuff too hard, why not? So yeah, that'll be the final for this one. I'm not going to go any further because, again, I've done these before and I kind of know what makes power and where it's going to make the power. So for pump gas, this is going to be it on this one. Obviously, these cars will make, you know, E85 on these cars. They'll make over 500 wheel pretty easily. This car would probably be, if we put a bigger tube intake, like a larger tube JLT on it, and E85, we'd probably be another 30-some horsepower than this, well over 500 wheel. These cars are capable of it, but, you know, for this setup right now, pump gas, we're doing really good. So I'm happy with those numbers. So we can go over and take a look at this final data log. Grab the laptop here. And as always, I got this reflection going on my screen. So I've got to kind of try to minimize that. All right, let's see here if I can still look at this. And all right, so timing. This car's taking some decent amount of timing for pump gas, so we're about 29 at the top. You can see right here. Air fuel. Gen 3 Coyotes and Voodoos, they like to be rich for NA. And again, this is something I've, in the past, long ago when I first started doing the even the Gen 2 Coyotes, but especially the Gen 3 and Voodoo engines, because they're 12-to-1 compression and because they are very volumetric efficient, they have a very decent volumetric efficiency. 4-valve cylinder head, VCT. The cylinders will fill, you know, they'll fill with more air than their displacement, just based on the cylinder heads flow really well, very efficient, and they'll pack more air in than what the cylinder volume actually is. So you achieve greater than 100% VE, especially with something like this with long tube headers on it. So that being said, because of that, air-fuel ratio is basically a function, and what I found on modern V8s, and this may hold true for, you know, V6s and 4 cylinders too, but modern V8s, these modern V8s that are efficient, especially when you talk LT GM stuff and Coyote, as you go up in cylinder pressure, the air-fuel ratio comes down. So even NA, you know, where I'm getting at is even normally aspirated, because they have high compression and they are very efficient. We're no longer talking 12-7 to 13-1. That is not where they'll make most power. They will make the most power 12.5 or richer, and that's just the nature of how efficient they are. So air fuel requirement really comes down to cylinder pressure. The higher the cylinder pressure, usually the more fuel you got to put in, the richer the mixture has to be. So as you get even normally aspirated, as you get these higher cylinder pressures with these higher compressions and more efficiency, better efficient, you know, pack in the cylinders with air, you need a richer mixture. So I'm commanding like a 0.82 lambda on this, and that's where it was happy. That's typically Gen 3 Coyotes and the Voodoos, that's where they like to be. And again, long ago I played with it where you try to lean them out to like a 0.85 lambda or 0.86, where, you know, you'd maybe see an older LS motor, like an older cathedral port head deal, or like an older mod motor, like a 3-valve or a 2-valve, or even the old 4-valve stuff, the 4.6 stuff. All that stuff, any like to run 12-7 to 1. These modern engines, these newer V8s, just they like richer stuff. LT GMs are the same way. They will typically make more power and pump gas at, you know, about 12.4, 12.5 to 1 air fuel. These Coyotes like to be low 12s. That's where they will take the most timing and makes the most power. You lean this thing out to 0.85, this thing will not run 29 degrees of timing. It'll be 26, 27, and you'll lose, you know, 10 horsepower, 8 horsepower, something like that. in that range. So just something I wanted to touch on in this car. Probably talked about it before, but yeah, so this is where it's happy. This is where I'm commanding it, is a 0.82 Lambda. 0.82 Lambda's low 12s, depending on if you're talking, you know, gas, E10, you know, 14.7 stoic or 14.0 stoic. That's why I talk Lambda, because the stoic can change depending on what type of fuel you're using, and Lambda is always the same. So, yeah, and everything else is pretty much, you know, this is nothing too crazy as far as the tuning goes. Yeah, I mean, timing, fueling, I'm leaving some of this HDFX timing in. Now, I could bring the borderline tables up so the HDFX system isn't adding 3 degrees, but I like leaving the ECU's ability to do that on these Coyote platforms. Just because if you get a bad tank of 91, you see that all the time here in Wisconsin. Some of the 91 you get is just not that great, and it's on an engine like this, I want the ECU's ability to say, hey, knock sensors are there's a lot of activity from them. We're not going to run 29. We're going to run 25. And maybe for that tank of fuel, it's going to run a little less timing. It's kind of the beauty of these Ford ECUs, these tri-core ECUs, and the ability to trim the timing quickly. So I leave this in. So some of the tuners talk Coyote knock, you know, where the scanner reads, if it's reading positive, it's pulling timing. Well, you can set the scanner up to do either or. So I set it up so this channel will read positive, it's adding, and negative, it's pulling. It's a little bit more, makes more sense to me to look at it that way. You can, there's a couple other data log channels, scanner channels that, if this shows positive, it's actually pulling timing. But I set it up so if it's showing positive, it's adding. So HDFX is adding here, adding 3 degrees. You can see towards the top, it's pulling, not pulling, but it's not adding 3, it's adding 2, and then it starts to taper off towards red line. You know, I'm turning this thing to, oh yeah, I'm turning it to about 8,200. You can, I mean, the limiter is at 8,250. You can, obviously, when we looked at the dyno graph, it's tailoring off pretty hard after 78, 7,900. It starts to fall off pretty quickly. So typically shifting these cars right around 8,000 RPM is where they're the fastest. Winding them all the way out to the limiter there's really no benefit to that, because the power curve from about 5,900 to 8,000 RPM is pretty flat. So that's where you kind of want to run them. Otherwise, yeah, everything else looks really good. My fuel trims, sorry guys, I'm just looking at this. Yeah, fuel trims here, short term, so that's obviously, these run closed loop. You can see the short term down there. -2.3 and 0, -2.3, negative. It's just, it's right there. Right where I want it to be. I like being within that 2-3%. So you can see throughout this range. It's adding just a smidge down in the bottom there, but yeah, so that's looking really good. Timing's looking good. There's no other limiters coming in, so everything looks as it should. So that'll do it for this one on the dyno. Like I said, I already got the street tuning done in this car. So this car is ready to go back to the customer so he can have a summer of enjoyment with it. So we'll take a look at that dyno graph one more time just to wrap this up. Kind of get a wide view of it here so you guys can look at it if you need to see for reference. Yeah, so I'm happy with that. These cars are a lot of fun. Turning 8,000+ and stick shift. They are a lot of fun. So that'll wrap it up for this one, guys. Thanks for watching, and keep checking back on our channel for more videos, and we'll talk to you guys later.